The lights blazed, cameras rolled, and the studio air crackled with electricity. This wasn't your ordinary political panel. This was American Politics Tonight's special live broadcast. And two powerful figures were about to face off. Donald Trump leaned into his microphone with his trademark confidence and spoke the words that would freeze the room. "Who are you to challenge me?" Across from him sat Jasmine Crockett, her navy blazer crisp, her calm demeanor sharp as she met Trump's stare. There was no tremor in her voice. "I'll show you," and show him she did. 12 minutes later, Trump was visibly regretting his decision. But the story starts here. It began at 9 p.m. sharp. Marcus Wellington, host of American Politics Tonight, approached the central table in the studio. Tonight was different. Not the usual panel discussion, but an unexpected confrontation unfolding live on television. "We have special guests tonight," Wellington said, turning to the camera. "Donald Trump and Representative Jasmine Crockett. They're both here for different reasons, but I suspect tonight will be unforgettable." Trump sat at one end of the table. Red tie, perfectly styled hair, and that familiar demeanor that commanded the stage as always. Across from him sat Crockett, calm, prepared, and listening with careful attention. The first 20 minutes passed with standard questions. Economy, foreign policy, domestic security, both delivered their prepared responses. But then something shifted. Trump, while answering a question, suddenly turned to Crockett. "This young lady talks a lot, but does she have real experience? I ran the country. I made deals. I sat at tables with world leaders." Wellington tried to interject, but Trump continued. "What have you done? Attended a few committee meetings? Sent a few tweets?" The studio fell silent. This wasn't a planned attack. This was an improvised challenge. Crockett lifted her head, looked at Trump, and responded with a calm voice. "Mr. Trump, if you really want to make comparisons, let's do it." Wellington's heart raced. This was spiraling out of control. Trump grinned. "Perfect. Let's see how prepared you really are." And at that moment, the most unexpected IQ battle in television history began. Trump stood up, turned to the camera. "Viewers, you're about to see a real test. This lady keeps challenging me. Let's see if her intelligence is up to par." Crockett remained calmly seated. "I'm ready, Mr. Trump. Are you ready?" Wellington tried to regain control. "Gentlemen, this isn't a planned format." "No." Trump raised his hand. "The viewers need to see this. This is how real leadership gets tested." Crockett smiled. "I agree. This is how real leadership gets tested." Trump slammed the table. "Perfect. First question. What is America's biggest economic problem and how would you solve it?" Crockett didn't hesitate. "Mr. Trump, America's biggest economic problem is income inequality. And to solve this problem, we first need to understand what caused it." She paused, looking at Trump. "You implemented tax cuts during your presidency. For whom? For the richest 1%. Result? The middle class paid more taxes. Corporations paid less." Trump tried to interrupt, but Crockett continued. "Now here's the real question. If you truly understand economics, explain this to me. How do tax cuts strengthen the middle class? Because the numbers show exactly the opposite." A deep silence fell over the studio. This wasn't an ordinary political response. This was a counterattack that would force Trump to question his own policies. Trump responded with a raised voice. "This is nonsense. I created the greatest economy. Unemployment was at its lowest. The stock market hit records." Crockett nodded. "Mr. Trump, do you remember what economy the previous president left you? Obama left you 75 consecutive months of growth. You continued it. This isn't your achievement, it's your inheritance." She paused, looking directly into Trump's eyes. "But what's really important is this. Real economic success isn't measured by numbers, but by changes in people's lives. In that great economy of yours, how many families were still trying to survive on minimum wage?" Trump's face reddened. This is an unfair question." Crockett remained calm. "Why?" "You asked it." Wellington tried to regain control, but it was too late. Viewers were mesmerized. Social media was exploding. This live broadcast was going viral. Trump caught his breath and launched the second attack. Okay. Let's talk foreign policy. I spoke with Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un. World leaders respected me. Have you ever spoken with another country's leader?" Crockett smiled. "Mr. Trump, foreign policy isn't just about photo ops. Real diplomacy is measured by results." She paused with a thoughtful expression. "You said you had a great relationship with Putin. Result?" Russia invaded Ukraine. You praised Kim Jong-un. Result? North Korea developed its nuclear program. Trump interrupted. That's not fair. I'm not finished yet. Crockett raised her hand. You weakened NATO. You alienated our allies. And now you're talking to me about foreign policy success? She slightly raised her voice. Mr. Trump, here's the real question. If your foreign policy was so successful, why is the world more dangerous now? The silence in the studio deepened. This was no longer an ordinary political debate. Crockett was systematically dismantling Trump's claims. Trump slammed the table. This is so unfair. The media always made me look bad. Crockett shook her head. Mr. Trump, taking responsibility is the foundation of leadership. Blaming everything on others? That's not leadership. Wellington's heart was racing. This had become uncontrollable, but it was also television history. Trump stood up, pressing his fingers on the table. Are you giving me a lesson on responsibility? Who are you to lecture me? And at that moment he spoke those famous words. Who are you to challenge me? Everyone in the studio held their breath. Cameras zoomed in. This was the moment when everything would change. Crockett stood up, looked directly into Trump's eyes. I'll show you. There was no anger in her voice, only determination. I am Jasmine Crockett. I'm from Dallas. I'm the child of a poor family. My mother was a cleaning lady. My father worked in a factory. She paused, not breaking eye contact with Trump. I studied law. On scholarships, taking out loans, because nobody handed me money. Trump tried to interrupt, but Crockett continued. I defended innocent people. I stood by families who suffered injustice. I fought against big corporations. Her voice began to strengthen. I was elected to the House of Representatives because the people trusted me. And now I'm here, on the same stage as you, because this is possible in America. She took a step toward Trump. Now let me tell you who I am. I am someone you've never been. I am someone who truly comes from the people. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. On social media, Crockett vs. Trump was trending. Millions were watching the live broadcast. Trump tried to step back. I come from the people too. I work too. Crockett shook her head. Mr. Trump, you inherited millions of dollars from your father. The only thing I inherited from my father was learning how to work. Trump had no response. Crockett continued. You say you're self-made, but the real numbers tell a different story. According to the New York Times investigation, you received $413 million from your father. Trump, that's a lie. Crockett, Mr. Trump, court records don't lie. Tax records don't lie, she paused, pulling out a file from her bag. If you want, I can read the documents here. Wellington intervened. Maybe we shouldn't get into such detail. Crockett raised her hand. No, Mr. Trump issued a challenge. I accepted. Now we're talking facts. She turned to Trump. You ask me, who are you? Let me tell you, I'm someone who truly started from scratch. I'm someone who truly earned their place through work. Trump tried to sit down, but Crockett wasn't finished yet. Mr. Trump, you were president. That's true. But what kind of presidency? She began counting on her fingers. First, it's documented that you told over 30,000 lies. Second, your own attorney general resigned because he said he couldn't fulfill your requests. Trump, these are conspiracy theories. Crockett, Mr. Trump, these aren't conspiracy theories. These are official records. She continued. Third, there was an attack on the Capitol building on January 6th. And what did you do that day? You stayed silent for hours. Trump jumped up. This is completely unfair. Crockett remained calm. What was unfair, Mr. Trump? Trying to stop the democratic process? Not stopping the crowd that wanted your vice president killed for hours? The tension in the studio was at its peak. This was no longer a political debate. This was a reckoning. Trump slammed his fist on the table. Enough! This is an unfair attack. Crockett gave no ground. Mr. Trump, you challenged me. I'm just stating facts. Trump began pacing back and forth in the studio. This is a trap. This was planned. Wellington intervened. Mr. Trump, you started this debate yourself. Trump turned to Wellington. You're on their side too. Crockett stood up. Mr. Trump, look. This is your real character. When cornered, you blame everyone. Trump turned, shouted at Crockett. You can't understand me. You've never seen real pressure. Crockett was silent for a few seconds. Then, very calmly, she spoke. Real pressure? She smiled, but it was a bitter smile. Mr. Trump, Do you know I started working at 16? My mother had no health insurance. My father never complained, so he wouldn't lose his job. She raised her voice. I worked while studying in college. You were getting a salary as a consultant at your father's company. Trump began to quiet down. Crockett continued. I know real pressure, Mr. Trump. The pressure of not being able to pay rent. The fear of having electricity cut off. The anxiety of not being able to go to the doctor when sick. The atmosphere in the studio had completely changed. This was no longer just a political debate. This was the story of two different Americas. Crockett lowered her voice. Mr. Trump, you ask me who are you? Let me tell you this. She turned to the camera. I am the story of millions of Americans. The story of people who got where they are by working, striving, never giving up. She turned to Trump. You are also a story. A story of privilege, a story of inheritance, a story of mistakes whose consequences you never paid. Trump sat down, put his head in his hands. This isn't fair. Crockett approached. Mr. Trump, life isn't fair. I learned that at a very young age. But I didn't use injustice as an excuse. Wellington opened his microphone. I think this is inappropriate. Crockett raised her hand. 1 more minute. Does Mr. Trump have anything final to say? Trump lifted his head, his eyes tired. I tried to do good things. Crockett nodded. I believe that. But intention isn't enough. Results matter. Wellington intervened one last time. Perhaps we could take your final words. Trump stood up, his voice weary. I love America. I did my best. Crockett stood up. Mr. Trump, loving America isn't enough. You need to serve America. She looked at Trump one last time. And real service requires sacrifice. Not ego. Trump couldn't respond. Wellington opened his microphone. I think tonight we all... But Trump cut him off. Turning to Wellington. I don't want to stay here, and indeed, live on air in front of millions of viewers. Donald Trump left the stage. Crockett remained in place. Looked at the camera. Viewers, this is how real leadership gets tested. Under pressure, who stays, who runs. After Trump left the studio, Wellington turned to Crockett in bewilderment. Representative Crockett. This was an unexpected development. Crockett smiled. Mr. Wellington, politics is full of unexpected developments. What matters is being prepared. Wellington. So what do you think about Trump's departure? Crockett. I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. This is his characteristic behavior. When faced with tough questions, he runs. She turned to the camera. American voters, you want your leaders to stay by your side during tough times, don't you? Well, you saw. Wellington. How do you evaluate what happened tonight? Crockett. Tonight we saw two different leadership styles. One attacked when confronted, ran when cornered. The other stayed calm, told the truth, stood until the end. She paused. Thought, the American people's choice is clear. As the live broadcast ended, social media had already exploded. Crockett Destroyed was trending on Twitter. Clip segments were getting millions of views on YouTube. Young Americans were sharing Crockett's words on TikTok. The most shared moment was this. I am the story of millions of Americans. The story of people who got where they are by working, striving, never giving up. Trump's stage exit was interpreted differently. His supporters called it an unfair attack. Critics saw it as an escape, but the numbers were clear. Crockett's follower count increased by 2 million overnight. The next morning, all news channels were discussing this event. CNN, Crockett silences, Trump live on air. Fox News, Trump faced unfair attack. MSNBC, political history's greatest meltdowns. But the most important reaction came from the people. Hundreds of support messages came to Crockett's office in Dallas. Young Black Americans were sharing, "This is my representative" on social media. Women's groups were showing Crockett as an example of strong female leadership. Trump broke his silence on Twitter, X. Last night I faced an unfair attack. The media and Democrats conspired. But I never give up. But even his followers were criticizing in the comments. Why did you leave the stage? Why didn't you answer the questions? This isn't leadership. That night lasted only 12 minutes. But those 12 minutes changed the fate of two politicians. Trump, who until that night used challenge as his own weapon, was now much more cautious. Crockett had become a national figure. She was known as the young representative who tells the truth. But the most important change was this. American voters now expected different things from their leaders. Calm instead of shouting, responsibility instead of blame, standing instead of running. And so, what we witnessed that night on live television wasn't just a political debate. This was America confronting itself. Trump had asked, "Who are you to challenge me?" Crockett had answered, "I'll show you." And she had shown him. Minutes later, Trump was visibly regretting it, because at that moment he realized the woman across from him wasn't just a politician. She was the voice of the new America, and that voice could no longer be silenced.